welcome to our second HSI speaker series. Now we have our delightful guests here who after what, 2-3 times called, please come, you've got to show us what you've done as far as course redesign and also student success redesign from the student services angle. And I met both Ruby and Imelda at a Haku conference about 2 years ago. And then when Monica Romero went to a conference this past, 2 months ago, and she met their colleagues, she said, yeah, right on. Right on track with what it is that we want to do in terms of instructional redesign and also student services redesign. So I'll let them also offer up a little bit more information as to what they do, because they can best introduce themselves better than I can. But I am very delighted to have them here, and also happy that you were able to make it. Okay.
Great.
And at the very end, we have evaluations as well.
Yep.
Yes?
We have to evaluate everything, right? My name is Rudy Sanchez. I'm actually an associate professor of management in the Craig School of Business at Fresno State. So that's my discipline background. I have a couple other hats I wear at Fresno State. One is I'm the Title V Faculty Course Redesign Coordinator, long title, which means I'm herding cats, basically, with the faculty. And the title you see on the screen is my current title, and where I spend most of my time these days, is as the Director for Academic Technology and Innovation on the campus, which is actually a very nice tie-in in terms of what we've been doing with course redesign and then how we're going to move forward. We may share a little bit more about our talent program we started this past fall. It's under the big umbrella of course redesign for the campus. Those are my 3 roles. Obviously, we're going to share really impactful in terms of what we're doing with Title V in my role in that operation. So, Imelda?
Okay, so my name is Imelda Dudley, and as of January of this year, I served as Student Success Counselor for our Title V grant. And so recently in January, I jumped over to our Title V Part B grant, which was funded to help support students at the graduate level. So I'm no longer in this role, but I was a part of the Title V grant since we were awarded in 2010 up to this past January.
All right, so I'm going to start off the presentation and give you some information about course redesign in particular, and the bigger framework in terms of how that fits in with the campus. And then I'll turn it over to Imelda for more of the student success and student engagement pieces, and then come back to me for some results in terms of what we've accomplished with the grant. So I wanted to first off start off with an acknowledgement that what you're going to see today is based on the presentation from Haku a couple of years ago, and the other presenter was in Chicago, is that correct? In Chicago for that presentation was Chris Hernandez. He's not part of the visiting team right now. He's also actually being converted into a permanent employee on the state side of the campus, which is a great thing to have happen. So one of the things you're going to see from us is about how we institutionalize some of these efforts and personnel from the grant onto the campus permanently. So, and actually for our grant, we had a lot of new personnel. So we didn't just have people like me who were just transitioning roles. Imelda was new to the campus in terms of a full-time counselor role. Chris was new as a researcher, and then we had other staff come on board to fill those gaps as well. So that's really one of the nice things about the success of the grant that we've seen. So I always start off with what I want you to leave with. And so there are some basic things I want to address during our time together this afternoon. One is really just kind of give you some descriptors in terms of the activities that were involved with the Title V grant, and my piece, of course, is going to be course redesign. Share some of the evidence of student success, the impact on students from both the course redesign component and also the student services component. And then again, those strategies for institutionalizing some of these things, the ones that make sense, both in terms of success and also for the campus and what the campus could actually absorb. So those are kind of really basic goals. So let me give you some background in terms of the Title V grant in particular. You all, with your Title V grant, have similar kinds of bullet points already in terms of what it's about. So ours started in 2010. We're sunsetting in a few months here. So you're actually going to hear from us basically what we've accomplished over the grant period. There's not much more that we can do with the grant funds at this point in time. We branded the grant, the Title V grant, as Class A. So commitment to Latina academic success and excellence. We have a new president, almost 2 years now, Fresno State's campus after 22 years of the same president. So there's a significant amount of shifting happening on the campus right now. Our current president, Joe Castro, is really, I would say, demeanor-wise, kind of low-key, but very, very charismatic, and gets a lot of things done on the campus and the community. He's very focused on moving the bar in terms of what we term success, and very excited about the idea of excellence. In fact, if you go on our campus now, it won't be more than 5 minutes before you hear somebody or see something that says "be bold," because that's been his mantra since he came, is to be bold. So our grant fit nicely within that theme, and so he's been paying attention to the kinds of things that we've done and trying to make that institutionalization process happen for the things that make sense. Our bottom line goal for the grant was to increase the Latino graduation rate. And as you know, there's a lot of things that go into a graduation rate. It's hard to say this program is the thing that moved the needle on anything, right? Especially at that level. But we do have some evidence that there are some things that go into increasing numbers in terms of our graduation rate, and we'll share those with you later on today. And then the two components here in terms of course redesign and then student engagement. So one of the things I really want to make sure that I emphasize with you is that I think one of the great things about the grant work that we did is that we had this marriage between student affairs and academic affairs. So the instructional side of the house and the student support services side of the house. We had a unique opportunity to really make that happen on our campus and have the conversations about how we could leverage both sides. And it really is, I think, because of that marriage and those conversations that we had at the vice president's level all the way down through staff and faculty in terms of how we can help each other in the success of our students. And that those conversations are so important to have, and oftentimes they don't happen. And so I think that was one of the really important pieces in terms of our grant ability and then what you're going to hear from us in terms of the stories that we're going to tell. So let me give you some background information about Fresno State and Fresno in general, in case you don't know much about it.
Incoming message.
Okay, so the music is from our Fresno State Jazz Band. So that's why I wanted to play that for you. This is our library, and right now various pieces of administration are housed in the library, and of course scattered across the campus. So I understand that some of our numbers are very similar to your numbers. So I know you have an increasing Latino student population. My guess is that's accelerating over the last few years, as it has on our campus. It was about 2 years ago where the Latino student population became the plurality of students on our campus, and we've only seen that gap increase in terms of the percentage of Latino students we have. I think our median age is probably a little bit lower than yours, given the very, very diverse population that you have. But I understand that the Pell Grant eligibility is higher here than it is at Fresno State. So clearly there are some challenges we all face in terms of what would be expected from the student population that we have. And I'll use that, emphasize expected, right? Because there's certainly strengths that our students have and bring with them to our environments. So I'm going to start with course redesign. And if you do any research on course redesign, the first thing you're likely to hit is something called NCAP, which is the National Center for Academic Transformation. Almost, or probably say all campuses who start down the road of course redesign start with NCAP. And they have a particular definition of course redesign that is this. Now remember when we started the grant, it was in 2010. So things weren't quite as good in California. I don't know about your campus, but on our campuses we saw a reduction in staff. The resources were very, very tight. A lot of things going on in the environment that weren't necessarily positive and very stressful for staff and faculty. And when we started with this definition, there are a few things that got people's attention. Yes?
I apologize. When it says whole courses rather than individual classes, if community college, we think of a whole course, we give an individual class. So whole courses mean in whole curriculums?
No, whole, so for example, if you have, what's your entry level English course? Like 1A or something like that? 101. English 101. You have how many sections? 100?
Ton.
So let's say you have 100 and you have 20 faculty, right, teaching
Yeah,
them across those sections. Whole course means all of that course gets redesigned.
Okay, as opposed to one.
As opposed to section by section, or in fact, we're doing their sections.
Okay, fair
Okay,
enough.
yeah.
Thanks.
And that was one of the sticking points, right? Because when you do that, you automatically have to get people to work together that maybe have not worked together. And then I don't know about your campus and our campus. If we're dealing with tenure track faculty in particular, there's a lot of ownership, as there should be, with the course content. So now when you're asking me to work with people across the curriculum and maybe non-tenure track people, now this becomes a sticking point for folks. Yeah.
Is this voluntary at first now?
Good question. The answer is yes, but I'll have a caveat about that.
Also, we have a problem which you don't have, in that our curriculum is across 3 different colleges, City, Mesa, and Miramar, whereas you are only dealing with the people you know.
Yep.
We would have to deal with people at other campuses who might not agree with us, and maybe who we have almost no interaction with.
Right. Especially if you go with this particular definition, right? Right. So you've already hit some issues with this definition just on the first phrase, right? There are other phrases in here that are problematic, especially again given the time frame. So I'm going to just highlight a couple of those. The lower cost of this definition. So think back in 2010, when faculty or staff see lower cost, usually that translates into one of two things: fewer staff, faculty, and/or maintain the number and increase the workload, right? And the last one I want to highlight is this information technology. So I'm a technology guy, right? But what this definition seems to assert is that technology is the only way to do course redesign. And that clearly is not the case. So this was the starting place, and we lived with this definition for about 5 months, 6 months maybe. It's what we had, and it's what we started with, okay? I'm going to come back to the faculty piece in just a second here. But when we looked at what we really were wanting to do and what faculty were actually doing around this idea of course transformation, it was a whole variety of things. Some of them were tech-based, some of them were not. And so we settled on this definition, and it has a perspective. It has a perspective of this active learning pedagogy, and that can be defined in any number of ways by the individual faculty member. But the key thing is going to be we want to focus on the student learning component here. That's what we're after. So we kind of narrowed that, what student success is, to at least focus on learning. Of course, we can have a conversation that lasts forever about what that means, but at least it's a place to start, and it's much more broad in scope. Because one of the things that we found out early on is that we had a course where there was no technology involved at all in the redesign. But what the faculty members in biology had decided to do was think about, at a very foundational level, what is it we want our students to graduate with, or leave our course with? What knowledge set? What skill set? What perspective? They completely threw out their initial starting point and began again. And this was a non-majors biology course, and it really changed everything from then on. Right? So you start with the outcomes, and then you go in terms of how you get to those outcomes as a faculty member. So let me just share with you just quickly what this means in practice. Any number of things. You look at the words on the screen, and some of these things have a kind of a technology component. Some of them don't. And these are things our faculty are involved with. And I would say if you pay attention to literature on teaching and learning, most of these words aren't new. These activities have been around for a long time, sometimes centuries. The difference is the context in which we implement them, right? And so these are some of the menu of things our faculty are engaged in around course redesign. It's their choice. We have lots of faculty members in the room. When we talk about student learning, who defines student learning? Nobody knew better than the faculty member who's teaching the course what all this should look like. We want to offer resources and support, and maybe show some new things that the faculty member hasn't considered yet, but ultimately it's the faculty member's job. That's what we do as faculty. So this is a lot of stuff on here, and if you try to do all of these things in one of your courses, good luck, right? And some things don't make sense in certain courses or certain disciplines. But just on the board here, you could probably take one of these things and really apply it to your individual discipline course. So again, I just want to give you some sense in terms of practical terms what this meant in terms of course redesign. I also want to share with you this model. So we started out course redesign, we didn't have a model. We basically had a definition from NCAP, and we said, okay, we're going to go. And in fact, the first training we had was a 2-day retreat for faculty that was facilitated by NCAT consultants. And so it was great. It was really interesting. It was very engaging and challenging, but it was from an outside entity using their definition of what course redesign was. And so after that point in time, we began to kind of vet what made sense for us. And this is the model that we are still working with, but it's not set in stone by any stretch. But this is what we kind of show faculty in terms of a framework. All right. So I want to highlight a couple things here. So this increased learning outcomes piece, I know it's a list of student outcomes. It really should be pulled out and put over here, because it's what we care about. In theory, if we can impact that, the learning, then we get higher pass rates, faster time to graduation, all that kind of stuff. It really isn't at the same time as all these other things, all right? Also want to highlight student engagement. So we were thinking about what is it that we really think is going to have an impact on student learning. And it could be any number of things, right? We could go to the selection process, we could raise the bar for student entry, and that would have an impact on student learning. We could do any number of things. We decided to focus on student engagement because we believe that captured that active learning pedagogy component. So if you look at the literature on student engagement, one of the first things you'll find, and often, is the definition of student engagement as time on task. And I would suggest to you that that's one definition, but there are lots of other components of engagement. So I come from a school of business, and in management and leadership we have this thing called engagement, and it's not time on task. Right? It's really an affective, it's a commitment to the organization, a commitment to myself, that makes me feel like I'm a part, that I belong. Okay? So we thought that would get us the learning outcomes, that would get us all this stuff downstream. Okay? Culture values. This is left vague for a reason. So it could be ethnic culture, it could be national culture, it could be whatever you want to define. We left it vague for that reason. So as you embark on your work, you define what this means. Same with values. One of the things that I know as an instructor is when I try to do something innovative in my class, especially if it's around student engagement, and I want to make people interact and move and get out of the lecture mode and do those kinds of things, there are some students who love it and some students who hate it. Right? And my thinking about that is that that's this part of the model. Some students like the collaborative work, some don't. Some like the engagement, the moving, some don't. It's kind of what they bring with them to the classroom. And in fact, I would say in some cases, the top students in terms of our traditional definition of top, the high GPA people, hate that stuff. For any number of reasons. But I think one of the reasons they hate it is because they're really good at the other. They've been really good at sitting in the classroom, figuring out what's required of them, doing that, and then moving on. Right? Lecture, notes, read, exam, next. I'm really good at that. Don't mess with my success. Okay? So there could be that mismatch here in terms of what we expect as a student in terms of the classroom environment and then our success moving forward. Does this make sense to you? Does this resonate with you at all? Yeah? Okay. Now, of course, you see on the outside we have all the things that the grant asks us to do, right? Graduation rates and retention rates, all those kinds of things. But for us, this really has to be the centerpiece, the student learning piece. So in terms of course redesign, here's how we started. With 6 courses in spring of 2011. I actually started the year prior to that, before we got the grant. And how did we get faculty involved to start with? Was it required? The answer is no, it wasn't required. But the process by which we did the initial recruitment the first year was less than optimal, let's say. so what happened, well, this is what I believe happened, is that we had an upper level administrator talk to department chairs. And we had already identified high enrollment, high failure rate courses. So my guess is you're familiar with that terminology and the logic of trying to find those courses, right? This is where you can have the most bang for your buck in theory. It's also where NCAT, as an organization, asks organizations, universities to focus. So upper level administrator talks to department chairs, deans. You have these courses in your college or department. We'd like to have your faculty go through some training. Can we contact your faculty? You can imagine when an upper level administrator contacts a faculty member that doesn't always feel like it's a volunteer type of environment, right? So the offer was made, and we did have faculty come. My guess is I can't honestly remember correctly right now, but I would say that the first day of the 2-day workshop with the NCAT folks, we probably had 15, 20 people in the room, a dozen different courses. Some people left at lunchtime. Some people didn't come back the second day. It just was not the right environment for some folks. The ones who stayed and executed did actually very, very well. And some were whole courses and some were pieces of courses. But we started with that in spring of 2011. Our grant metric was 5 courses over the 5-year period. So year 1, we're already way ahead, right? We saw some early success on a variety of levels with the course redesign work, and that got the attention of the upper administration, including our president at the time. And the university invested substantial amounts of money in course redesign for subsequent years. So what we saw was rapid growth, and through summer of 2013, we've had a total of 64 courses. So we took a couple of things away in terms of parameters. One is we went with our definition of course redesign, so it opened it up to non-tech interventions, which I think was the right thing to do and also very powerful. We also now had our own staff doing the training as opposed to outside consultants. We also had success with a subset of faculty who can now also do the training. So we had faculty working with faculty. So that was helpful. And we kind of reorganized this from a 2-day outside consultant-led experience to a 1-week summer intensive Fresno State-led activity. So there were several things that changed that led to this increase in faculty numbers. So over that period of time, over 100 faculty have been supported through this course redesign effort. After the first year, everything was perceived as, well, truly voluntary. And partly because we opened it up. So we weren't just looking at high enrollment, high failure rate. Honestly, part of that is just being able to move the institution along by opening it up. But the other part of that, if you think about it, if you get all the people who are not doing well based on those metrics in the room, who's going to teach who? Right? If you open it up and you have lots of different people, some who are being successful already who just want to do better or do different, some who are struggling and know they're struggling, some who are struggling and don't know what to do about it. So you get that mix in the room and they can teach each other, right? So for me, that switch was really important. And so the second year we had a great variety of faculty and courses involved. And that really helped the outcomes for those faculty, both in terms of process, but also in terms of outcome. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, so then was the intention to get all the courses redesigned, as in that whole course definition?
No.
Or was it just those 64 courses and there would be other
Yes.
state?
The second part of that. So for example, we had multiple sections of history. Well, some faculty in history wanted to redesign and some didn't. And we left whatever, same course, and we let them separate, if that's what they wanted to do. Now in the end, if you end up with evidence that the redesign works better in terms of student learning, it's a pretty powerful argument, right? It's hard to say, well, I don't want to do anything different and let more students fail. Assuming we trust how our colleagues are measuring the student learning, right?
Did you see, I'm just curious, and maybe I'm getting ahead, so forgive me if I'm thinking in terms of from a business perspective, if faculty were supportive of this, design curriculum, including the learning activities that incorporate technology or whatever they do, did they, at Fresno State, did they offer that as sort of something that other faculty could use if they wanted? Because I'm thinking if you hand people the option to say, look, this really worked well for my course, you don't have to use it, but you can. Especially, we use so many adjuncts, they're coming in, they're
Right.
hired at the last minute.
Right.
I'm thinking if the option is, even if they don't even know about this, if the option is, oh, here's this nicely tied up with a bow curriculum for you, or you can just do it all yourself.
Right.
They're probably going to go, at least at first, to give it a try.
Right.
Because it's ready for them.
Yeah, I would say that's a really good question in terms of how we propagate this out and share. The answer is we let that happen usually at the department level or at the course level. So some departments had that culture of, if somebody has a good idea, we share it amongst our colleagues. And some were more protective. So it really was still a home culture decision in terms of how that happened. I think we could have done better at saying, here's something that works, going back to that list of things, here's somebody who's doing really good at signature assignments. Here's somebody who's doing really good at service learning. And then let people see that and give the curricula away if they wanted to share it. And we could have done better at that, to be honest with you. We have some of that, but not a lot of it, and it's not structured. And the other thing that we saw with at least individual faculty, if they really liked what they were doing, even though they had targeted a course, because they had to tell us what course so we could kind of track it, they would do it in other courses. Because either it was fun, or they saw the students learning better, or whatever it was that made them kind of propagate that on their own, they would do that. But the same thing about sharing with we use the term lecturer on our campus as adjuncts. We have the same issue, right? People are coming in, going out, they're not getting contracts until the day of, and there's no way to bring people up to speed. So that's another challenge we have. So let me share with you what faculty think. This is a longer video, but we'll just share a few minutes of it here.
Technology Innovations for Learning and Teaching is committed to assisting faculty in their efforts to engage students in the learning process. One way this is being accomplished is through course redesign. The Teaching Innovations Summer Academy is specifically designed to assist faculty in this effort. Bringing together a diverse group who are interested in finding new ways to shape their courses, the Academy provides support to faculty as they explore new methods and tools for reaching their students.
One of the things that was really good about it is that it had a really strong pedagogical approach. So they were really encouraging us to think about helping our students and really focusing on student learning, which I was really glad about. But the other thing that I really liked about it is that even though I feel like I have a lot of experience using technology in the classroom, they were able to provide me with more information about how to use technology in the classroom, specifically different ways of using Blackboard, the way to use the grading system, the way to use wikis and blogs, and even the discussion forum was really helpful.
I think that the way it was organized was really beneficial because really what the redesign team was doing was just presenting us with ideas. So they're not really trying to convince us that we should do this thing or that thing. They're just kind of giving you an idea of what you can do. I think it's really up to the professors to pick and choose what they think is going to fit into their classes and help them they're really just there to kind of facilitate and make life easier for us.
The Summer Teaching Innovations Academy provides specific hands-on support and allows faculty opportunities to use a wide variety of tools, ranging from lecture capture, Web 2.0, and assessment tools, all targeted at specific outcomes related to their redesign projects. The Academy also offers faculty a unique opportunity for collaboration across disciplines that is often difficult to obtain.
Participating in the Academy allowed me to work with other faculty members and learn about what's being done in other colleges and how other faculty members in the sciences and technology, how they perceive the transfer of information to students. And so the collaboration was excellent.
The collaboration part of the Academy was really important to us because we were able to sit down together and talk about the kinds of performances that our students could actually do and the kind of performances that we wanted to see. And so we were able to articulate those things to each other so that we could then plan for our work to really focus on those things in the fall semester and going forward.
So just some, feedback from faculty across the campus. Obviously, you saw the different disciplines there. And I think that's another key thing about what we did, as opposed to some other campuses around course redesign that are very discipline focused. We went across disciplines. We thought it was important for a number of reasons, not the least of which was to have people have the conversation across the campus as opposed to in specific departments. So we did have some champion departments. Biology has been an early adopter and continues to be kind of on the edge of what we do with course redesign, including our tablet initiative. And then we've had other departments who pretty much are like, we're good and we'll do what we need to do and thank you very much, which is fine, right? It really is an opt-in type of process we're working with here. So I'll stop here. Any questions right now about?
I have a question.
Yes.
Who ran your Teaching Innovation Summer Academy? Who?
That's good. That's really good. So that was coordinated by myself and my team. So I have a team of instructional designers. The Title V grant allowed us to hire an additional instructional designer focused on course redesign. So she was primarily the lead for that program, but we had two others that we could pull upon. We pulled in everybody who we thought was going to be valuable for this group of faculty. So we had student support services, we had services to students with disabilities, we had our IT folks, we had administrators come, just kind of we're behind you on this, we want you to succeed, messaging, instructional design team of course, a multimedia specialist. I mean all kinds of folks were part of this. And again, it was really just kind of to set the table. So you can pick what you wanted to do, but if you really wanted to do some lecture capture or create some tutorials, and you needed some help doing that, we had people who could help you both on the pedagogy side and the IT side. But having it in-house meant that if I had a question later on as the faculty member, I knew who to go to, right? So if you bring it in from outside, which is not a bad way to go if you need it temporarily, but we felt we were in this for the long haul. And so we developed the infrastructure to make that happen.
So if students know that they have been successful with a certain type of lecture format and a certain discipline and would like to take the course again, but through a course redesign model, do they know in the course schedule which courses have been redesigned or no?
No, is the answer to that question. In some cases, we didn't have the bandwidth to actually offer complementary courses. The one place where we had a naturally occurring field experiment, as much as you can have field experiments, is with one of our math courses. So we had students who had taken a math course in the traditional format and failed, retake the same course, same instructor, redesigned, and done well. And so we have feedback on that particular course. Not a huge N, but it's something, right? So not a huge sample size. And so that's something that we continue to collect data on in terms of individual level success. But no, we didn't flag courses as redesigned, but it didn't take long for students to figure it out. Right?
This may be the answer may be too long, so let me know if it is. So this was a part of Title V, which meant that you were redesigning the courses to specifically for Latino student success. So what were you doing specifically in those courses to to focus on Latinos?
That's a really good question. So obviously we don't have courses that only Latino students take, right? So that's off the table to begin with. And in fact, the Title V grant, when you actually get into the details of it, can help all students across the campus. So Imelda will talk about this. Even though we marketed to Latino students on some of the student support services piece, any student that walked in, we served. So in terms of your question about basically cultural pedagogy, we did not focus specifically on Latino students' success within that particular component. What we did is we looked at things like belongingness, and because we felt that hit a broader swath of students in all courses, and trying to work with faculty to not only do the content, my colleague says content delivery, but that's not just delivery, it's about content creation sometimes, it's about content understanding. And creating an environment in the classroom that was positive in terms of its messaging to students that you belong here and you can succeed. And that's part of the underpinning of some of the differences we might see with Latino pedagogy. So that piece was there, and we didn't explicitly call it out. And to be honest with you, I said this in the morning, to be honest with you, one of the reasons we didn't explicitly call it out is because we couldn't find rich literature that would suggest to us there's this cultural difference that impacts in the classroom that's different for Latino students versus some other types of students. A lot of it's tied to SES. Anyway, anything else published? Yeah, please. But it has to. But we're looking for the things that would be Latino specific versus cutting across a number of other factors. Right.
Like Latino critical theory.
Yes, and that's come up. And even there's some bridges, right, to other critical theory. Right. Good, it's a great question. So we do have course redesign information broken down by ethnic group. And where we had success in terms of GPA and pass rates, the redesigns had a greater positive impact on Latino students versus other groups of students. And the reason, and we have a theory behind that, we didn't test it because we saw it as an artifact after the fact, is that lots of the, I shouldn't say lots, a fair number of the transformations introduced collaborative work in student generation of content. And we think that there's a culture fit, that values fit, with that and Latino students versus other groups of students, or to a higher degree. At least there's a variety of different options in terms of how you demonstrate performance in learning. Right.
How do Latino graduation rates compare to white graduation rates?
There's about a 10-point percentage gap in terms of graduation rate.
By the 6-year union or something?
Consistently. Yeah. But the 6 years is the one that we care about, right? So impact, and again, these are just gross measures. I share with my faculty when we start this process and all the way through that the things that we're going to report to the federal government are GPA and pass rates because that's what we wrote the grant around. Okay? So that's what you see here. My personal opinion as a teacher and as an educator is that these are things that are easily measured and may not be the best indicators of student learning. There should be some bridge between the variables, but we know as teachers that there's a lot that goes into a grade that may or may not be the key thing we're looking at in terms of learning outcomes. So these are kind of results through 2013. And you'll see here that we've had pass rates increased by about 10%, course grades increased by about 7%, but you'll also see a range here. You see some course redesigns where there was a negative impact on student performance on these metrics, and some where there was positive. Obviously, we're here because the positive far outweighed the negative, but it's important for you to see the whole picture. We're dealing with experiments here, right? We're dealing with experiments at the pedagogical level, and also at the individual instructor level. So I may want to do something in my class that I think is really cool, and I've seen somebody else do it, but I do it and it doesn't have the same power, right? Because it just doesn't fit with me as a teacher or as a person. So all of those variables are in play here. We have to pay attention to that stuff and understand there's going to be some level of not hitting the metrics that we're reporting out to the grant and still potentially having a positive impact on the faculty member and on the student. So we have had faculty who are in this kind of the negative realm here in terms of pass rates and GPAs, come to us and say, I know it doesn't look good, and that's the language they use, I know it doesn't look good, but I really think this is working. I feel better as an instructor, there's more energy in my classroom, students are coming to class more than they used to. I don't know why it's not working on these numbers, but I think it's working. So those are things we have to pay attention to. And then, as always, the faculty member is the one who knows what success is. So maybe there is a signature assignment out of the whole stuff that happens in the final grade that the faculty member really cares about, and that's the thing that that person looks at in terms of their success, not what we report to the federal government. So does that make sense? Yeah. That bottom line there, that 1,328 students saved, that's based on a baseline prior to redesign compared to what happens afterwards. So we see that increase in pass rates. That number down below represents the number of students who have passed with the transformation that likely would not have passed without. Now, there's not individual people, it's an algorithm, but it's something to look at in terms of a number, personalizing some of these percentages. The other thing we want to highlight to faculty is that even though we have this thing called the high failure rate courses, it's people, it's students who are making up that failure rate. It's not just the percentage. And so we wanted to maintain that as best we could as we move through the process. So a couple of other faculty development things, and I'll turn it over to Imelda. Title V did help us pay for some faculty and learning communities. These are groups, small groups of faculty, 5 to maybe 15 faculty who meet periodically through the course of an academic year. Title V helped the campus support faculty and learning communities around first-generation students. It's kind of some unique things about that population because we have a high percentage of those on our campus and how we might better serve them around writing, writing skills, and so we had some faculty and learning communities around that. We also helped an existing unit on campus that was focused on service learning to do some more service learning work for faculty, and so the grant paid for some other things beyond the kind of key piece, which was the course redesign around faculty development. So I just wanted to share those with you here. I'm going to come back after Imelda has some time with you to talk about some more outcomes.
So Rudy talked about the course redesign piece, and that was super important, right, to our grant. But our grant was twofold, and the other part of the grant was our student engagement activities. And while course redesign impacted the students indirectly, sort of, because the grant trained the faculty to work with the student engagement piece, we directly impacted the students. And so we created about 10 different activities throughout these past 5 years. And I'm going to go more into detail with some of them. So, like I said earlier when I introduced myself, my role within the grant was to be a counselor. And I oversaw about 4 to 5 graduation coaches. Graduation coaches were graduate students who were studying counseling, and they needed to complete 600 hours of internship in order to graduate, right? So we told them, hey, we have a place for you. And at first, they sort of volunteered, and then we were able to secure funds to actually pay them. And so they completed all 600 hours plus 100 in training with us. So that was amazing because I was one counselor outreaching to about 5,000 students, right? Not all 5,000 students came, otherwise I wouldn't have known what to do. But a significant amount of students did come and use our services. And so that was one of my main roles. It was to advise students on GE, graduation plans, and anything that was related to advising, right? I trained these graduation coaches to do the same thing that I did, basically, so that we can help more students. And so the second thing on there is the college advising portal. And I'll talk a little bit more about the college advising portal in a second. The pre-nursing early alert intrusive advising system, I'll talk a little bit more about too. SupportNet is a position that we funded, a counseling position. We have a program at our institution that reaches out to students who are at risk. And we have support net counselors, and so our grant actually funded this position. And industry site visits and field trips was also one of the things that we did, where we took out students and exposed them to the different fields that they were pursuing. Connect to Careers is a course that we developed, and I'll talk a little bit more about that one too, as well as the CVS externships and our financial literacy program. And then finally, the last bullet that you see there is our mentoring program, which in some way the university is offering through our alumni office. So the first thing that I want to talk about is when we started this grant, we looked at how advising was done at Fresno State. And we looked at faculties because they do most of the major advising on our campus. And I know here, since it's a two-year institution, it's done a little bit differently. A lot of faculty don't do advising as they do at our campus. But this is what the faculty role looks like at Fresno State. They, as you can see, they are torn, right? Does anybody want to come work with us? So on top of the teaching, the research, the service, the grants, and working with colleagues, staff from their departments, they also do student advising, right? And so because of this, we looked at our advising model. So this is what it looks like at Fresno State. We have a student, and the student is advised by the general advising office, and they focus mainly on GE. Then they turn them over to the faculty for major advising. And then there's also student support programs like Class A. So we were considered a student support program. So students get advising from professional advisors, from faculty, from interns, from student staff. And students sometimes don't know where to go because advising is done at so many different areas at the institution, right? So these were some of the challenges that we found. There was training materials everywhere. Different people had different training approaches. Some faculty were kind of just thrown into it, hired, and hey, you're going to advise students A through F. And they weren't really taught how to advise. And so it was a challenge. And so we decided to create a cohesive place where people can share best practices, right, in advising, materials, flyers, videos, anything that had to do with advising. And so we created the College Advising Portal. The College Advising Portal, like I mentioned, was a place where everybody who went through a training with us could have access to it. It was a great way of disseminating information because it was easily accessible, right? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And anybody can just email us like, hey, you need to update this, so we could easily update it. And it was basically an online training tool. This is what it looked like. As you can see on the left, you see the tabs, and these expanded to offer more information. And as a result, the College Advising Portal is currently being adopted by our University Advising Center, which is great because it's going to live beyond the Title V grant, which is what we wanted to do, right? And also the university just launched a Advising at Fresno State site for students. So the site is for students because we had different, like I said, materials and websites in different places. So sometimes students didn't know where to go or they were being told different things. Well, now it's all in one website. And so students can go to this website and find the answers to their questions. And so there's information for prospective students, current students, returning graduate students, and then faculty and staff as well. So this is what the site looks like. It just launched this past week. And so the College Advising Portal will, like I said, is also being institutionalized. Now, to shift focus a little bit, I want to talk about one of our other initiatives, which was the nursing initiative, and this was an early alert system that we developed for our nursing students because our program is really impacted, right? We have about 800 pre-nursing students, and they have to complete 8 prerequisite courses, a cumulative GPA of a 3.0, and notice the prerequisite GPA. Average 3.6 or higher, and we admit 50 students. So we turn away 750 students, and for some students, that's awful. They've already told their families, I'm going to be a nurse, they've told all their friends, and all of a sudden they get rejected, right? So where do they go? The university started to change students' major because they were declared pre-nursing, right? So any student who didn't have a minimum of the 3.0 was automatically switched to undeclared. And the way they were notified is via email. Okay, and so we came up with the pre-nursing initiative solution where we didn't have a real control over all students, but we did have a small control over our Latino students. And what we started doing was we gathered data on what a successful nursing student looked like, and then we looked at the progress that pre-nursing students were making towards becoming nursing students, and we sent them every semester a progress report. This is where you are at, and this is how you compare to a successful nursing student. We felt that we could deliver bad news a little bit more sensitively, at least with our students. And so the goals with this initiative was that we decreased time towards graduation. We redirected a lot of students into other equally satisfying careers in the health field. And we just gave them a snapshot of the reality of how difficult it was to be a nursing student.
And be a nurse, right?
Right, yes. Yes, and so currently the university has, so this is what students see, by the way. This is what we sent them, and then underneath it was what the snapshot of what a successful student looked like. And so the university has adopted a similar process, and they are actually sending progress reports to all of their pre-nursing students. So rather than sending the email, they're doing something a little bit more active, and they're changing the way they deliver those news to them. So we surveyed the students because with every piece of our grant, right, whether it was quantitative, looking at pass rates through the course redesign, we also did qualitative research to see if what we were doing was actually helping and what students thought about it, right? And so 97% of students found that this process was very, very helpful. So in the email, we suggested similar careers or other careers in the health field, and then we also invited them to have a one-on-one conversation with me or one of the graduation coaches so that we can share with the students, okay, so this is what the university offers. You can go into one of these directions, or there's also other community colleges that offer other, perhaps not nursing, but like speech pathology. Well, we offer speech pathology, I'm thinking respiratory therapy, or other degrees like that where they can still get that patient, employee, nursing, health field provider interaction that they were seeking through the nursing program. And so these are just some quotes after we disseminated the information to the students. We surveyed them, and these were some of the things that they said. Prior to the grant, we didn't really have a baseline, but these are some of the statistics that we did gather. Some of them are still pre-nursing, some of them are still trying to pursue that avenue, and for some of the ones that have came and are still pre-nursing, I told them, hey, so this is where you stand, and but you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and just apply at Fresno State. There's several other institutions where you can still be accepted. Did you want to add something, Rudy?
Yeah, I was debating with that. But so the nursing piece, one of the things that the grant allowed us to do was ask some naive questions, because we knew there were some issues and we knew there was this bottleneck, but nobody was really asking the question about why and what are we doing here. So as newcomers with a different perspective and really no skin in the game, we could ask questions. And so that helped, I think, in terms of moving this forward.
And then two of the prerequisites were redesigned. Right? All right, so this was yet another very successful component to our student engagement piece. I want to talk about Connect to Careers and our CBS externship project. So Connect to Careers and CBS were both one-unit courses that we developed for the Connect to Careers. All students in all majors were encouraged to apply. For CBS, it was the result of a partnership that we developed with CBS, and only business, nursing, and pre-pharmacy students were encouraged to apply because, if you see the last point, they were offered an employment opportunity after the completion of the course.
So you're talking about CVS, the drugstore?
Yes, yes, and they employ front store, they employ pharmacists, right? And then some CVSs now have minute clinics where they employ nurses. And so the students, for Connect to Careers, the students had to do for both, a series of career-related assignments, cover letters, thank you letters, resumes, and I made them apply to a real job, and I made them do mock interviews and all that. And for CBS, they did that as well. But the difference is that for Connect to Careers, they did 45 hours of service learning in any place that they wanted, any agency, as long as it was related to their major. So if the student was studying liberal studies, they had to do it at a school and shadow a teacher. For CVS, the drugstore, they did their 50 service learning hours if they were business, front store, if they were nursing, minute clinics, if they were pre-pharmacy students, in the pharmacy. This is what students' reflections were on Connect to Careers in CVS. So with the first one, student actually was a junior, right? And she had never been exposed to the classroom. And after this experience, she realized that teaching wasn't what she thought it was. And so she went into a different major, which was really great, right? Because, I mean, worst case scenario, she would have graduated, gone into the classroom, and then realized, gosh, like, I was in school for the past 4 to 5 to 6 years, and this is not what I thought I was going to be. So yeah, she changed her major, still sort of in the same field, just different major. The second one, however, she is now more confident than ever that she was in the right field. She was actually a criminology student, and now she's been applying to all kinds of law schools. She's graduating this semester, and her experience was really, really great. So another one of our programs was the financial wellness program. This was a financial literacy program where we had the students create budgets, right? Because a lot of our students, this is the first time that they're on their own. This is the first time that they're earning income. They don't know how to balance anything, right? And so we created this program. So another thing that was huge is that student loan debt is increasing. The average loan debt for a student is about $26,000 nowadays, which is huge. And so we wanted to educate our students so that they didn't go down that route if they didn't have to. And so we also did different workshops like banking basics, where we had a bank manager facilitate this workshop And finally, we had a fund matching component because we wanted our students to get into the habit of saving. And so the minimum that they could save so that we could match them was $100. The maximum was $250. And we did this for two reasons. One, because we know that students don't have a lot of money and aren't making a lot of money, right? And then two, because we can't afford to, we couldn't afford to match more. So this was really successful and students really liked this. And so with all of the programs, the Connect to Careers and CVS, externship, the financial wellness, with all those three programs, I'm not forgetting one. So we had external monies. We had to get a little creative in the way that we gave monies to students because the grant only funded my position. That's it. And so in order to do all of this that I did, we sought out external funds. We received very generous donations from local banks, Wells Fargo, City Financial, and then CVS. They donated to us about, I think it summed up to $300,000 so that we can give our students these $600. And so, you know, the reason why we wanted to tie monies to these services were because a lot of our students work, right, to support their education. And a lot of our students were not doing internships. And that's why they weren't getting those experiences. And so if a student has to work at McDonald's, you know, to pay his college tuition and choose between doing an internship, an unpaid internship, they're going to go to McDonald's, right? And so that's why we wanted to tie a little bit of money to it so that they could be more engaged and they would actually go through the program. And so this is a picture that we took at our semester recognition ceremony. Every semester at the end, when students completed these different programs, we invited them and to a luncheon. We invited them. We invited our administration so that they could see what we were doing. We invited our donors so that they could see that we're doing good stuff with the money that they gave us, right? And so it really gave us an opportunity to showcase our success stories. And I do have a couple students that I'm going to point out. Gabriel Negrete, he was a student who participated in the CVS externship program. He was pursuing pre-pharmacy. He was given the opportunity to work as a pharmacy technician. Now, I've looked at pharmacy technician programs, and they cost about $20,000 to $30,000 to be certified and work as a pharmacy tech. Well, he did it for free through CVS. And on top of that, they are giving him a scholarship to pursue pharmacy school once he's done with his bachelor's, which was really awesome. Jesus Contreras, he, physical therapy student, when he started the Connect to Careers program. After finishing his 45 hours of service learning, he realized that that wasn't really what he wanted to do, and he's now pursuing a career as a physician's assistant, which is really great. Similar, yet a little bit different. Crystal Garcia, she did her service learning hours with Farmers Insurance. She's a business student, and she has been hired with them for now 2 years and is graduating this semester and thinking about either opening up her own agency or going into a different direction, but at least she got a taste of that, right? And experience, really good experience under her belt. Now, Lucia, she's the one that decided to go into speech pathology instead of teaching. Bless you. So from those different student engagement pieces that I mentioned, about 5 of them are being institutionalized. The college advising portal, the student success counselor. So I told you guys that as of January I jumped into another role, but the new counselor, she was absorbed, and so she's now going to be working with the university full-time and still going to be overseeing graduation coaches, which is great. College advising portal has been institutionalized, pre-nursing, intrusive advising. The Department of Nursing is keeping it. Industry site visits, our career office does something similar. And then CDS and Connect to Careers are also being institutionalized without the award piece. Hopefully they're able to secure more funds because that well is drying low for us. And then financial wellness is something that our health office has institutionalized. And then LUCES is something that our alumni office has also institutionalized. So at first, when we started the grant, I was a little bit skeptical about how this was going to work. I thought that the popular piece was course redesign, but after a while, we started gaining a lot of traction, and we found that the whole grant actually was really important, and the university really did see value in it and chose to keep a lot of components. So it makes me really happy that the student engagement piece was equally as successful as course redesign. And now I'm going to turn it over to Rudy so that he can share what a Class A served student looks like.
So a couple of takeaways here in terms of Class A served. So Imelda just listed a whole bunch of things in terms of what the student engagement piece was on this. What we mean by Class A served student is any student who engaged in at least one of those things. So what the takeaway from that is it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be a simple thing, something that goes back to the idea of reinforcing to the student that somebody cares about you and that we want you to succeed and that you belong here. Anything that's going to help us do that will help our students out. So 17% is 70% of the Latino student population, not all students on the campus. All right, so that's why the 803 number is low relative to 23,000. But let me show you a couple things. So when I first saw these data just about a month ago, I went to Chris, who's our researcher, and said, is this right? Because if it's not, I'm going to share it with a whole bunch of people on campus in a presentation next week. Make sure it's right. And so we want to check if it's right. So what we're looking at here is graduation rate, and of course we care about the 6-year graduation rate for grant purposes. Class A served students versus non. Again, these are all Latino students. So you can see there's a huge gap as we go throughout time in terms of the graduation rate. You'll recall from the general graduation rate for Fresno State is around 52%. So even the line is way bigger than that in terms of the percentage of students who are graduating. This is for the 2008 cohort, and you'll see this non-served line goes up also a lot more than the previous slide. This reflects, I think, what we saw in terms of the overall graduation rate increasing over time. So all good news here. The gap question. The gap is persistent. So there's still, if you look at the overall graduation rates for Latino students versus Anglo students, that's still that 10 percentage point gap. So things that have happened have helped everybody, more or less, and that's true because advising, whatever's happening on the campus is really touching all students. So that's the good news. The bad news is the gap is still very persistent. So to me, this is crazy good result. Now, can we say the grant caused this? Yeah, I mean, that's a hard argument to make. You saw the model earlier. There's a bunch of stuff that happens here. And we're not the only things happening on the campus, right? So we don't know that for sure, but we know that there's at least this correlational relationship here between students who are engaging in some part of the grant activity and graduation rates for those students. So let me stop there and field more questions, or have us field more questions, or have a conversation about what's...
On average, how long does it take for each class to be redesigned?
The expectation we had was we have the Summer Institute, so it's a 1-week intensive during the summer, 5 days during the week, 8 o'clock to 3:30 every day. We provide all the food and all that kind of stuff. The expectation is that you take that starting point and you have something viable by that fall. So it's a short time frame in terms of what happens. As with anything, when you change something you've been doing for a long period of time, even though you think you're doing the right thing, there's a good chance that it doesn't work the first time out, right? Because there's a lot of adjustment that needs to be made. So we ask, and we understand that, and we ask faculty to be persistent in their redesign. We try to balance the value of a faculty member engaging in this process, whatever the process is. So that includes other things that are offered by my team, which is anything faculty development related around teaching and learning. So the way the RTP piece is worded is that faculty participation in these kinds of activities is seen as a benefit. So we tried to mitigate some of that, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I get that, you know. And again, I think, well, part of that goes to the initial conversation about what counts as effective teaching, right? So if you can demonstrate that students are actually learning more, and maybe your satisfaction rate goes down, what does the institution really care about, right? They care about, oh, I think that person's a great teacher, or I actually learned something, right? So there is that balancing act. So I would say, and we've encouraged doctors to do this, and most have, if they have good results on a redesign project, include that in your RTP file. Right? Here's the before and after. Yeah. You had a question, Becca, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I guess, sorry, I still want to return to this. Are there just general resources for course redesign? And then also, are there certain, I mean, because it seemed like there were a whole slew of possibilities to use in course redesign.
Right.
Are there certain ones that have been shown to be more effective than other ones? Or, you know, is there data based upon discipline, course? I don't know, just anything really to how to actually implement this when I walk away today.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff on course redesign. As much as we moved away from NCAT, it's a great place to start because they have a lot of resources, and I would say there's good evidence for the programs they've been involved with, and you can take the pieces that seem to make sense to you. I think that the flipping model, which is becoming very, very prevalent now, especially in the sciences, is one of the things that a lot of faculty are kind of gravitating towards.
What is that?
The flipping model, which basically means you flip your lecture and your homework. So you take the stuff that you would do in class, typically as a lecture, and you make that homework, and you do the homework in class. So you're basically flipping the content. And the reason faculty like that is because usually the redesign stuff takes more class time. So if we're doing problem-based teaching and learning, if we're doing collaborative work in class, it's going to take more time. So how do I cover my content? Well, you cover your content in a different way.
So it's like they're doing the reading at home, and then in class they're doing answers and
right, actual problems. So for like an accounting.
I'll tell you what I'm doing for my auditing class. So my auditing class is a theory-driven class. It's very, very boring and dry to lecture on. I get bored with it. Even if they've been taking all their accounting classes, it's now getting into a theory of what is an audit and learning a whole new language about it. So they already learned a new language, accounting, now they're learning a second one, auditing. So what I've done is I've made about 5 or 6 cases for each class, and I've created handouts so that if maybe they didn't have a chance to read, I'm focusing their energy on what they should actually be looking at to answer these cases in class together. So I'm applying it and having them actually think about what would actually happen on audit, how can I find fraud, what things should I be looking for, instead of just memorizing, oh, well, this is fraud, this is kiting, this is lapping. It's actually having them apply that information, and it's really, I've seen a substantial increase in the test scores overall for all of my students, compared to the last year when I taught it as a lecturer.
I just realized I have a flipped classroom, I didn't know.
And like for my other classes that are more intro accounting classes, I actually do partial flipping because it's really difficult, because accounting is hard, period, for most people. And so I do a lecture portion and then I have them practice. So every piece, they're breaking it up. They're not just having lecture the whole time, because I can show them on the board and it can make sense, but if they don't actually try it themselves and have somebody supporting them, there's a high drop rate.
And that's what we see, and what's good about many sciences, and certainly math, is that there's a lot of technology that can support that. So you can, one of the math redesigns we had was faculty member leveraged existing technology that's available from a publisher, had students do homework problems, and the faculty member could see what's happening. So who's struggling, who's taking more time, who got it wrong, and then go directly to that student and say, I see you're having a hard time with this, tell me what's going on. And then do the one-on-one coaching, as opposed to not knowing until somebody fails a midterm that they're not getting it, right?
And people are actually taping their lectures. I was reading about this at Stanford, that you can, it's not taping anymore, you can
record, capture.
Record your lectures and then present them in 10 or 15-minute segments with quiz questions in between, and then students watch those on their own time at home.
Right.
And that frees up more time for the classroom.
when you do actual problem solving.
Application work
Right.
to make sure they really understand it. And can do
And I would say even the spot beyond that is not only just taking your traditional lecture and breaking it up, but throwing away the whole idea of a lecture. And so what is it, what concept is it you're trying to get across? Do that in the short increments, and then you have kind of a menu of concepts that you're working with, not traditional chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3. Right. Okay, I think are we? Well, let me. So I close almost everything I do with this quote. So I just wanted to close it here with you. You all, like faculty on our campus, do a tremendous amount of good for our students and for our community. And so I want to acknowledge that to begin with. And then, you know, you can embody, you can do things on your own. You don't need a lot of help to change things that you're doing. And just go ahead and do those things, things that you think are the right things to do. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.